To another episode of Electric Independence. Today we're going to go and talk with Moby in his home studio, who apparently has a huge collection of analog instruments, particularly vintage drum machines.
So my love for these old drum machines partially has to do with the fact that no one's drums in boxes anymore. You know, drums all exist on the computer. And I understand if I had a software company or a synth company, I would make plugins because you don't have to build a box. For me, it's almost like this is like my Noah's Ark for drum machines. I collect them, I think they sound great, and I love that they all come with some like residual history. The fact that they've all been used and had drinks spilled on them and people have sweated on them. You know, that's, as much as I like the world of plugins, no one ever sweats on a plugin. Like when you're in a band, you're always waiting for the other musicians to show up. And logistically, being in a band is quite difficult. Because you have 4 people in a band in the suburbs, like one of them's drunk, one of them is at work at the mall, the other's with his girlfriend. You're trying to find a place to rehearse, and you're like, okay, well, you know, your friend, the drummer's mom says you can rehearse in the garage from 2 until 4 on Thursday afternoon. Whereas with electronic instruments, they're always waiting. They never complain, they don't have girlfriends. So it was like that seduction of having like an unlimited sonic palette with basically like musicians who are always there waiting for you. So, you know, you can't have a rock band cannot rehearse in the suburbs at 3 o'clock in the morning. Whereas you can make electronic music at 3 o'clock in the morning and your mom doesn't complain. The studio here is really just an extension of the first tiny electronic music studio I had in my mom's bedroom in Connecticut. In fact, I even still have the same Casio Synth. This was $299 back in 1985 or 1986. And it's kind of a legendary synthesizer because it was a weird hybrid of analog and digital technology. So yeah, so what's happened over time is I've just bought more and more and more equipment. I mean, I have a lot of equipment in storage in Long Island City, but this is most of what I use. The most recent album, Wait For Me, was everything was recorded here. You know, the drums, the vocals, the guitars, the keys, the bass. And big studios are great if you're recording a rock band or if you're recording an orchestra. But I just think recording at home, you can end up with recordings that are more personal and just have a lot more character.
How do your neighbours feel about the drum set in the apartment?
Well, this studio, it's a room within a room. So there's fairly thick walls and then a bunch of space and then outside walls, and then there's 6,000 pounds of sand under the floor. So if I'm playing drums, they could possibly hear it, but for the most part, they never hear anything.
Now, this is pretty interesting, this synth setup. So are these all wired in and you just pull them out whenever you need to play each one, or do you have to, is it just storage?
No, they're all wired. So you have like MIDI going to here, going into all of these. They all receive MIDI because I don't actually use them. I have the MIDI controller over there. But yeah, they're all hooked up into the patch bay. I guess I got lucky because there was a time in the late 80s when no one wanted anything analog. So this was like $300 or $400. I have my 808 and my 909 and a few 303s that were all in that same like $400. So it's ironic that old analog equipment is literally about 10 or 20 times more expensive now than it was 5 years after it was made. At one point, I could fit most of the synths that I had in here, but then eBay happened, and I just started buying stuff obsessively.
Do you use all the equipment that you buy, or is it?
Well, there's a lot of it I do, but especially with the drum machines, most of, I mean, they all work, but most of them are for show. So what I did when I bought the drum machines, is I take them in here and I sample the individual sounds because it makes it a lot easier to use them. And then they just sit out there looking pretty.
You got a lot of doubles out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I ended up with a lot of doubles because I would be online and someone, like some guy would find an analog drum machine in his basement and take a really bad picture of it and label it wrong. And so I would buy it thinking it was this drum machine I'd never heard of. And it shows up and it turns out I already have 2 more of them. Drum machines were originally invented to accompany church organists. That's why a lot of them, like, they were kind of thin. Like, this is a perfect example. They were long and thin, so someone could actually screw it to the bottom of their church keyboard. But a lot of these, like I think the rhythm ace, see how like they're designed to go underneath the organ. And then I guess at some point drum machines started to be seen as really square because it was mainly like church organists and guys playing cover songs in hotel lounges. And but some people, you know, like Blondie, Suicide, Sly Stone, Kraftwerk, sort of made, and some of the disco records, like Rock Your Baby, sort of made drum machines hip again. And so this was like Electro-Harmonix making a drum machine for like the hip end user. Thus far, very few people have discovered these. You know, like the 909s, the 808s, I mean, a lot of the Roland drum machines, you know, people are willing to spend thousands of dollars for them. And these are still pretty cheap, like $200, $300, but they're amazing. Yeah, these, like, if my apartment's on fire, these are what I would grab.
Really? Can we hear a little bit of that? Is that possible?
I think so. We can lose the space drum.
So they're all pre-programmed. You can't.
They're all pre-programmed.
But they're still fairly intuitive.
I mean, you can lose different parts.
Do you use this on any of your albums?
Mm-hmm. In making records, I've always just been very utilitarian. Like, use whatever's at hand and use whatever works. And also, there was one of the reasons I have used a lot of electronic instruments over the years is once you have them, they're easier to record than live instruments. You know, like recording an analog synth is not rocket science. Recording a baby grand piano is very difficult. First you have to have a baby grand piano, and then you have to figure out where the mics go. Whereas with the Juno 106, you just take a 1/4-inch cable and you plug it in the back and you plug it into a preamp and it's fine. But as far as I mean, the records I've made, some of the sounds are digital, some of the sounds are analog. In hindsight, I mean, digital synths are fine, you know, and they're really good at doing certain things. But, and I'm not the only person who's going to say this, I mean, analog will always sound better and more interesting. You know, but with an analog, like if you open one of these drum machines, like there's actual, like a circuit path. So there's electricity going through this machine being modified by these filters, and it's actual real, there's something physical there. But like this guy, this is the only, like on eBay and in secondhand shops and on Craigslist, this is the only time I've ever seen this one. I've never even turned it on. Because sometimes I'll buy a lot at one time, and it's on my to-do list to actually listen to them. So this is on my to-do list of ones to listen to. But I just think it's so pretty and elegant, and it seems like sort of like a Madison Avenue, like some Madison Avenue executive in 1962 would have had a drum machine on his desk and like next to like his phone in the wooden case, and you know, because it's like a suitcase you could, you know, get on the train, carry it to work. And this one over here, this is, if I have like a prize to my collection, This is like that scene in Spinal Tap when Nigel Tufnell's showing guitar and he says, you know, don't touch it, don't even look at it. This is my equivalent of that, because this is not this exact one, but this is one of the first drum machines ever made. The Wurlitzer Sideman. It weighs about 80 pounds. It's all tubes and built-in big, beautiful speakers. I don't know anybody else in the world who has this drum machine.
Has that been on a record?
What's that?
Has that been on a record yet?
No, recording it, it's maybe at some point. But it doesn't actually have an output, it just has the speakers. Like, part of what I like about drum machines, they're awkward. You know, I mean, they've somehow become cool, but they're inherently the nerdiest piece of equipment ever made. There's no such thing as a cool electronic musician. Like, put sunglasses on an electronic musician, give him a cool photo shoot and a cool haircut. Deep down, he is still a nerd who read Star Trek books when he was growing up. You know, and any electronic musician who, like, whenever, and I've tried to be cool at times, whenever I see an electronic musician doing like a cool pose or a cool photo shoot, I was like, you're a nerd, you spend your time with computers like me. You know, we're not cool.